I remember that trip to California like it was yesterday. It was 1998, and my wife and I were excited to attend a wedding. At the time, traveling across the country was a different experience. There were vast stretches of empty land and forests that made the drive both exciting and daunting. As we crossed into Nevada, I was driving on a long straight road that took 4 hours to reach the next gas station. The air felt weird, and the sky seemed a little bit red. I tried to ignore it and kept driving, hoping to reach the next town soon. But then, out of nowhere, I saw a group of men walking on the side of the road. It was strange, but what really freaked me out was the little town that appeared right ahead of us. The sign said "Welcome to Ground Fall," and I remember seeing it like it was etched in my memory. As we drove into the town, the air grew darker and more red. It was as if the town was shrouded in some sort of malevolent aura. We parked our car in a small supermarket to buy some snacks and drinks, but the people in the town were odd and weird looking. Their ears were tiny, as small as a baby's ear, and their eyes were just completely white, even the pupil. They spoke in a language that I had never heard before. My wife and I put our items on the counter to pay, but the person at the register just stared at us with those scary white eyes and small ears. We felt uneasy and left the store as quickly as possible. We were clueless and didn't know how to react to what we had just seen. As we drove away, we saw a mini mall out of nowhere. A lot of people were walking and shopping everywhere, but to our horror, everyone's eyes were just completely white. I told my wife to stay in the car, and I went to take a closer look outside. But as soon as I stepped out, a woman screamed and cried, pointing at me like she had seen a ghost. Everyone started yelling and pointing their fingers at me with their white eyes and small ears. They spoke in an unknown language that sent shivers down my spine. I quickly got back into the car and sped out of there as fast as I could. As we drove away from that place, my wife was crying in the passenger seat. It took us a while to pass that town, and I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. When we finally exited the town back onto the empty road, I looked back in my rearview mirror and noticed that the town was slowly starting to get covered with some mist or cloud and disappear in the distance. The sky seemed to be back to normal, and everything felt renewed. When we got to California, we asked everyone we knew about that small, creepy town, but no one had ever heard of or seen it before. It was a few days after the incident, and my wife and I were still trying to make sense of what happened in that strange town. The memory of this small town kept popping up in our minds, and we couldn't shake off the feeling that we had stumbled upon something inexplicable. We decided to take the same road on our way back home to try and find that town again. It was a risky move, but we felt like we had to see it again to get some closure. As we drove, we kept a close eye on the horizon, hoping to catch a glimpse of that eerie red sky again. But hours passed, and there was no sign of ground fall. We stopped at a gas station to fill up, and the attendant noticed our out-of-state plates. He struck up a conversation and asked us where we were headed. We told him about our strange encounter in Nevada and mentioned the name of the town. The attendant's face went pale, and he started to stutter. He told us that he had heard of that town before, but it was not a place anyone dared to visit. He said that there were rumors of strange things happening there, and people who ventured and never returned. We were stunned by what we heard and didn't know what to make of it. We thanked the attendant and continued on our way. As we drove, we started to see faint red clouds on the horizon, and we knew that we were getting closer. Several miles in, a town appears in the distance. The sign says "Welcome to Ground Fall." We were apprehensive, but also curious to see what lay ahead. As we entered the town, we saw that it was completely deserted. There were no people, no animals, nothing. It was as if the town had been abandoned for years. We got out of the car to take a closer look, and we saw that the buildings were in a state of decay. There were cracks on the walls, and the paint was peeling off. It was a stark contrast from the bustling mini mall we saw before. My wife and I hopped back into the car and never looked back. Years later, I try to look for answers, but nothing comes close to what my wife and I saw. It's like a ghost town in hell, but I know I saw everything with my own eyes. If anyone has a similar experience, please let me know. This town, Ground Fall, still haunts me to this day. There are many small towns in my state that my friends and I have never heard of or even visited. One day we decided to go on an adventure to a town about a few hours away. When we got there, there were only a few houses, 2 gas stations, and 2 restaurants. We were amazed by it because we came from a city where houses were abundant and where you could find gas stations on almost every corner. To us, this small town was so intriguing and peaceful. It was like we went back in time to a place when everything was simpler. We decided to go eat at the restaurant. In there, while we were eating, one of my friends asked the waitress if there were any cool places around here to visit. She was in deep thought and then said that this small town had nothing like that, but there was a wood just right around the gas station that led to a small lake. She said that there were rumors of the lake being haunted, but since she didn't believe in those things and was too busy to go explore it, maybe we could go do it and report back to her. We agreed, so after eating, we found the wood and entered it. We didn't really believe it either, but it was just a way for us to pass time and explore new places. The way to the lake was peaceful. As we approached the lake, we noticed that the atmosphere had changed. We actually had to pause our movements to look around. We noticed that when we arrived at the lake, there were no bird sounds anymore. It was so quiet. Too quiet. We brushed it off and continued towards the lake, hoping to find something interesting. But as we reached the edge of the water, a chill ran down my spine. I thought I felt something brush past me because it suddenly got so cold that I could actually see my breath. I looked at my friends, but they didn't seem to notice it, so I didn't want to say anything in case it was nothing. The lake was a shade of dark blue, to the point where we couldn't really see anything underneath. There was just a log sticking out in the middle of the lake. It was a bit far to make it out, but we were sure it was just a log. The water was so dark that none of us wanted to go into the lake to take a swim, so we just stood on land and played a game of who could skip rocks the most. Then we heard it, someone saying hi to us from behind. We looked back, but there was no one there. We went back to skipping rocks, then we heard the voice again, this time from the right of us, saying hi. There was still no one there. We've started to feel nervous now. We then heard the sound of someone playing with water, so we looked towards the lake. To our shock, we found that the log was actually moving about. We took a careful look at it, and then, to our horror, we finally knew that it was not a log. It was someone with their head poking out to look at us, just staring at us and bending their head to drink water once in a while. We first thought it was just someone swimming out there, but the more we looked, the more unnatural the person's movements were. They kept looking at us, drinking water, and looking at us again, but going faster and faster each time they looked at us, until they just started shaking their heads up and down in a fast motion. We got so scared that we decided to back away. As we were turning, from the corner of my eyes, I saw a girl standing next to one of my friends, waving her arm at us. I looked quickly at him, but the girl was gone. Then, all of a sudden, one of my friends just shouted from the deepest part of his voice and sprinted into the woods towards the car. We all got so scared that we followed him. When we caught up to him and sprinted alongside him to the car, we didn't ask any questions and just drove out of there. We didn't even go back to the restaurant to report back to the woman. When we were finally home, my friend finally revealed what he saw. He saw a woman standing next to him, but part of her face was missing, and she was smiling at him and waving. The woman suddenly opened her mouth, sticking a long tongue out of it. That was when my friend gave that horrifying shout and started running. It had been years now, but we hadn't gone out to visit some small towns. We were satisfied with living in our big town. The small town we visited was located in the United States, but due to safety reasons, we couldn't disclose its exact location. We had been planning this trip for weeks, intrigued by the rumors we had heard about the town being haunted or having strange occurrences. Despite our initial skepticism, we were eager to explore this seemingly abandoned place. It took us about 3 hours to get there, but when we finally did, we were excited to explore it and see all the stuff that was left over. The town was very quiet and still, and the houses were old and looked like they hadn't been lived in for years. We saw rusted cars abandoned in the middle of the road and old bicycles left to rot. It was like the town was frozen in time, forgotten by the rest of the world. As we walked deeper into the town, we noticed strange symbols etched into the walls of some of the buildings. They were unfamiliar to us, and we couldn't decipher their meaning. It felt so weird to see these symbols, like someone or some people were trying to summon something. One of my friends went up to a symbol on a door and took a photo of it, but the moment his flash came on, we heard something drop inside the house. For a moment, we froze, and then we all slowly opened the door and looked inside. We didn't see anything, so we went to explore the town further. After we came to the middle of the town, I heard footsteps coming from behind us. I told my friends, and we looked back and around us, but we didn't see anything. As we began to walk again, I heard the footsteps again, this time closer. We looked again but still didn't see anyone. We decided to walk again, and when we walked past a glass door, I took a quick glance at our reflection, and my heart almost stopped. There was a person with long hair crouching near one of my friend's legs who kept crawling along with us. I yelled and jumped back. After I told them what happened, they all started to get scared. We decided to cut short our adventure and go back to the car. But as we started to make our way back, we realized that the town was not as quiet as we had thought. The sound of footsteps started to become louder and more frequent, and we could hear strange whispers coming from the houses. We tried to pick up the pace, but it felt like we were being followed by something or someone. It was such a peculiar feeling. I wasn't sure how we knew we were being followed. It was just this feeling we had that someone was staring at us. As we were rushing back to the car, one of my friends tripped on what we thought was a log, but it turned out to be the body of a woman. She appeared to have been dead for a long time, and the sight sent chills down our spines. We screamed in horror and ran back to the car, driving away as fast as we could, not daring to look back. It wasn't until we were far away from that town that we started to process what had happened. The experience had left us shaken and disturbed, and we couldn't explain the strange occurrences we had witnessed. We vowed never to return to that town again, and the memory of that eerie trip still haunts us to this day.